not going crazy. Lately my head and my heart seem to be at least 8 million memories apart. My heart says to love you, my head says to run. It's like my heart's too afraid to tell my head what it's done. I know that it can never be the way that it was. Even though you be the death of me, I can't give you up too much. It's not enough, it's not the love, it's not the lust that grips me. It must be the whiskey. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, I'm Jerry Lee, hillbilly and Sandy, tickling things and diamond rings, birds, Florida style. I'm Jerry Lee, piano, crystals, tragedy, penthouse, and shot streets, and great balls and time. Well, if you don't know, then I learned something. But don't call me together for nothing. Dang the breath, methamphetamine does. Crazy enough to marry my first cousin. Touched by the devil, paranoid hellraiser. Fuck Chuck Berry, I'm the real trailblazer. People staring like they're scared of me. Full of record they ought to be. I'm Jerry Lee, Jerry Lee.
An exciting morning to have you, Josh. You know, a true troubadour, a poet. And at first, I got to tell you, Josh, we saw you at 3rd and Lindsley 2-3 weeks ago. And you just tore the roof of that joint, Josh.
Oh man, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That night was a lot of fun.
There was something special there that night. It felt like it was like the, you know, with the masks off and like the timing, people were having a great time.
Almost felt normal, didn't it?
It didn't. There was a magic there, Josh. So just wanted to acknowledge that. But yeah, man. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining. So much to talk about. We could go on for 17 hours. So let's get on with it, Josh. Oh man. So where are you coming us from, Josh?
Right now I'm in Kentucky.
Nice. The
Western
bluegrass.
Kentucky. Up here, seeing my youngest son, Jace.
Cool, Josh. So Josh, when you have to, like when you're working, because being a musician is work, people think it's all kinds of fun, but the actual work of writing a lyric and writing music, is this something that you go like outside your house and you work, like do you wake up and you tell your family, your team, guys, I'm going to work, treat it like a 9-to-5 job, or is it kind of like when the mood hits you, Josh?
It's a little bit of both. I normally write in the morning. I get up really early, and I find that I'm my most creative and most clear-minded early in the morning. So normally when I get up, I'll get up and take my shower and get a cup of coffee, and then I'll sit down and try to write. And sometimes I get something, and sometimes I don't. But I try to make a habit of doing it. If I can't do it every day, I at least try to do it 4 or 5 times a week, depending on,
Sure.
my travel schedule and all that kind of stuff. So.
Got it. Okay, cool. Because so let me understand this, because I'm fascinated by the process. And, we had a comedian here a couple months ago. She's been in a bunch of movies, and she said, look, Jamie, I love being a stand-up comic. And every day I go to my office, take out a legal yellow pad, and I write. It's not even that I come up with something great, but it's kind of the discipline, the discipline of writing whatever it is and honing that material. It seems like that's like your approach.
Yes, sir. Robert Earl Keen told me best way to write a song is to sit down and don't move until the song has come. He said, don't get up for a drink of water. Don't get up to go to the bathroom. Just sit there. And if you sit there long enough, something will come. So I tend to agree with him on that.
I love that, Josh. I love that. Okay, so you go into a room, and I was thinking about this. I mean, I don't have the ability to write a song, but when I think of you and you've written all the great stuff, Wishing Well, Damn These Birds, it's like, does Josh go in and channel something about, like, say, your mother, something about your father, a life experience? Do you go into a room basically and start and state, okay, this is my goal for today? Like, I want to write a song about the feelings of my father. Would that be the goal, or do you kind of wait for like the random thing to come?
I really just wait for inspiration. Sometimes, especially if I'm writing with someone else, they say when you co-write, you want to try to come in with 2 or 3 ideas already ready to go. So if I'm writing with someone else, I try to have at least an idea for something. But if I'm writing by myself, I really just sit there with the guitar and fiddle around until, I hear something that I like, and then try kind of let the the chords or the melody or whatever it is dictate what the song will be about.
I love it. I love it, Josh. Okay, one more question about your songwriting, because you're just like another level, man. I mean, look, like, do you ever go in there and think, oh no, I don't know if this is gonna be trite or not? Like when I was like listening to your discography, that's what came to mind, right? Because like, are people gonna laugh at me ever? Does that ever come to your mind? Because like the Beatles, they can write, obly do, obla da, but Josh
Mhm.
Morningstar, man, you're always like so deep, so strong.
Well, I appreciate that. Man, I try to go by, if I like it, someone else will somewhere.
Mm.
There really hasn't been. I mean, I have goofy songs. Like I have a song about marijuana that's pretty goofy.
Oh, that's a pretty good song. Yeah.
There's been songs throughout my career that are a little on the sillier side. Really though, my only concern, I don't really worry much if people are going to laugh at it or if people are going to like. As I'm writing, my main concern is that I like it.
I love that.
Afterwards, that's when well, do you think other people are going to like this, or is it catchy enough? That's when all that stuff comes in. But as I'm writing, really my only concern is, do I like it, and is it something that I'll stand behind?
Love it. Love that, dude. And he comes across certainly, and your fans get that too. So, all right, I have to ask you, and I know you answered this a million times, but I have to ask you about Hank Williams, Josh.
Mhm.
Where did Hank Williams come into your life from? Was it from your grandfather growing up in Maryland?
Yes, sir. So growing up, I lived with my grandparents most of my childhood, and they were classic country fans. Hank Sr. was my grandfather's guy, so that was kind of my gateway into country music, was that kind of stuff. But it was the 1980s. He listened to all the 80s stuff, Alabama, Hank Jr., all that kind of stuff too, Randy Travis. But Hank Williams was his guy, and because of that, he kind of became my guy as well.
I love it. And Josh, why do you think Hank Williams is like still more as relevant as ever? Like what is it about his songwriting that you see? Like why is it still as powerful as it is?
Uh, I think it's a little bit of everything. I don't know that in 2021 it's just his songwriting. I think it's kind of the mystique of here was this guy from Alabama who wasn't very educated at all. He didn't make it past the 7th grade before he quit school. So he wasn't an educated man. He was a very simple man, from small town Alabama, but he was able to write these songs that they're simple. If you read his lyrics, he's not using $1,000,000 words. He's using words that anyone can understand, but at the same time are so profound. And it's just, I think it's everything. I think it's the fact that he didn't have to deal with the Elvis Presley phenomenon. Elvis came around in 55, Hank died in 53.
Right.
So he didn't have to, whereas his contemporaries, guys like Ray Price, Fair and Young, Webb Pierce, and Nashville as a whole, all had to figure out a way to deal and survive rock and roll. Hank didn't do that. He didn't have to do that. So his music is kind of frozen in time almost, and is a portrait of this man who wasn't around he was only on the national scene for 4.5 years. Moving on over, his first single came out in 1949 or 48. I mean, excuse me, 47, 48, something like that. And that was on a small label out of New York called Sterling Records. So it's not like he was, he wasn't around for a long time at all. So I think that adds to it. There's this mystique around him. Because back then country music wasn't really covered in the news. There was only there was only one or two interviews that he did that have ever been published. One with a guy named Ralph Gleason, who went on to found Rolling Stone magazine.
Right.
So there's the mystique, and then there's also these songs that are so simple but so deep. So I think it's a little bit of everything. I don't think there's any one thing that you can pinpoint as to why Hank has lasted, 70
Right.
years after his death. I think it's all of those things combined to make for a very unique. Plus, he was the first country music superstar. Obviously, there was, Ernest Tubb and Roy Acuff and people that had a career before him,
Right.
but Hank was the first one that really went mainstream. So he was kind of on a different level than E.T. and Roy Acuff and those guys, and I think that's part of it too. He was such a big star while he was alive, and then he dies, and then you have these songs, and so I think it's everything plays into it.
Man, yeah, absolutely, Josh.
Sorry for rambling, man. That's
no, dude, I love it. I love it. Actually, like when I was thinking about, he was married, of course, to Audrey Shepherd, and then he divorced her and he married what's her name, Billie Jean Horton. So I wanted to ask you about that, about like, okay, you're a road warrior, Josh. You've got a great, tremendous career, respected by your peers. What's the importance of being surrounded by the right people, right? Because the first wife was his manager. It like that is really important for an artist more than ever, right?
Yes, sir. I mean, especially in this day and age, if you're going to have any kind of shot at making a living at this, you have to have the right people around you, or else you're going to be miserable, man. I've been doing this for a long time, about 17 years, and it's only been since Cody Jinks recorded "Must Be the Whiskey," which was a song I wrote, that anyone's really given a shit. Most people most people, in fairness, still have no idea who I am, but more and more people now have heard my songs, even if they don't realize it. More and more people have heard my songs, and I owe that, totally to Cody Jinks. Cody recording my songs gave me validation in the eyes of people. So, I mean, having a good team around you is crucial to, any type of success, not only in the music business, but I would imagine, all business as well.
Absolutely, Josh, man. I'm telling you, like, I could talk to you for days. Okay, and like, okay, listening to your songs, like, such great stuff. Like, for example, reading the lyrics to "Wishing Well," such a great song, or "Pulling Weeds," part of the theme of recovery, and the way you play with words, right? The way you argue about it's like tending to your garden, and the way you play with all these themes, Josh. It reminds you of hip hop, and it made perfect sense when in research we realized, man, like Josh had a '90s hip hop phase. That's pretty epic. Tell us a little. Like, it's funny because we got it the other, like we realized it the on reverse. Tell us a little bit about you and hip hop, Josh.
Well, so I was born in '83, but I grew up in the '90s. And like I mentioned, I lived with my grandparents, and they were big country music fans. But every teenager rebels, or at least most teenagers rebel. And at the same time I was growing up, so was hip hop. And hip hop and country music. The first person I ever heard say this was Hank Jr., and he said the hip hop and country music, they're the same. It's just people talking about the things they've experienced, talking about their lives, the thing they're going through. So, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. At their core level, country music and hip hop are both art forms where people express themselves and their feelings through rhyme form, so it's not really that different at its base. The thing that got me about hip hop was I'm a poetry fan and always have been. I've known Annabelle Lee by Edgar Allan Poe. I had to memorize it when I was like 9 or 10. So I've always been a fan of poetry, and just like country music, hip hop, maybe not the stuff today as much, but back in the '90s, guys like, Tupac, Biggie, Big Pun, those guys, that's poetry, man. You can read their lyrics as poetry, and just like you can with Townes Van Zandt or Hank Williams or anything. What I really dug about hip hop was what they did with words, like the internal rhymes and multi-syllable rhymes and all that kind of stuff. That's what really intrigued me. And when I write, I try to bring elements of that into what I do. For example, in the song Damn These Birds,
Yeah.
Conversations with a Raven Who Was Black As Every Night Has Been asked if I would like to partake in taking Vicodin. So at the beginning of that first line, you have Conversations with a Raven, which is an internal rhyme in itself. And then Black As Every Night Has Been. Night has been is at the end of the line there. So you got AAB is formed. So you got Conversations with a Raven, Black As Every Night Has Been. Asked if I would like to partake in taking Vicodin. So you have another internal rhyme at the end of the line, whereas the first internal rhyme is at the beginning of the first line there, Conversations with a Raven. Then at the end of the second line, you have taken, which is another internal rhyme, and then end it with Vicodin.
Yeah.
Which rhymes with night, night has been, or whatever that word is. So that kind of stuff, that came from being a hip hop fan. And that's one of my,
Spectacular.
that's one of my most favorite things to do when writing a song, is to try to put those internal rhymes in there, because it's fun to me. And there's not a whole lot of people in this genre of music that I'm aware of that write that way. You know what I mean? So I've always been of the belief that, there's already a Cody Jinks, there's already a Tyler Childers, there's already, George Jones, Merle Haggard, all these people, there's already those people. I need to be myself. And I find that things like that help to set me apart, so.
Unbelievable. That's true. You have your own thing going, and it's spectacular, Josh. Well, you're being so generous with your time. So let me ask you just a couple more questions, Josh.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things about you is how everyone just raves about your heart and your good spirit. Everyone says, man, Josh will take the shirt off his back and put it on people who need it. This is like a universal theme. It's beautiful. And we've connected a little bit with Cass Jones. He raved about you, about your spirit. And, you guys met out in the road with Ward Davis and Cody Jinks, right? How was that encounter with Cass? And when do you realize, Josh, okay, I can actually have a creative, serious collaboration with this individual?
I met Cass. Cass's dad, Greg, is Ward's tour manager. So I met Cass. He would go out with Ward and Greg, and that's how I met him. And Cass is 14 or 15 years younger than I am. But when I talked to him, the first time I talked to him, I could tell that this wasn't your average 22, 23-year-old kid, that this was a guy that had a good head on his shoulders. He was very intelligent. He had been raised right. And so that I was like, awesome. So we kind of clicked on that front. And, Cass he's very easygoing. He doesn't make a lot of stink about anything. So that makes him easy to travel with. And then because he's so young, he hasn't been spoiled by the music business yet. He hasn't gotten jaded.
Yeah.
So he's still excited about it. And that's good for, my attitude and my moods. And we just kind of, he's another person that is very into a lot of different kinds of music. So he helps to bring elements of the things that he listens to that I may not, into what it is that I do.
Right.
And it's just worked out really well. He's been with me it'll be 2 years coming up not too soon, man. And he's the longest employee I've ever had. Not that I don't look at him as working for me. I look at him as working with me. But, he's been with me longer than just about anyone. So.
Love it. Well, Josh Morningstar, you have said it all. I just wanted to commend you and let you go because, Josh, as great as an artist you are, as great as a poet, as a songwriter you are, the message that you give to the people, to your fans, through your music, your story, Josh, of resilience, it doesn't go unnoticed. The fact that I think your theme that life is a gift and it offers us the privilege, opportunity, and responsibility to give back by becoming something more is your theme. And it's very inspirational. And I just wanted to thank you. You're a hell of an artist and a hell of a human being, man.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, man.
Absolutely.
That means a whole hell of a lot to me.
Absolutely. So take care. See you on the road and be safe.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.